It's sunny, but it's been storming really bad.
Oh yeah, it's been raining out here too.
Yeah.
Well, right now it's like 80 some degrees. The sun is out.
Ooh.
Yeah,
You're gonna have
we're having some
nice
nice weather.
weather.
Yeah.
It's hot. It's a little warm, but no complaints. And I think like Friday was like kind of cool. Yesterday was kind of cool. And now it's like hot. Yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, it's not it's to me it's cold to a point where I had to put the heater on, but I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure people in New York would not have the heater on it. It was like in the 60s.
You know how we do it in Texas. We take out our best coats,
Yep.
our furs, and our pleather
Yes.
jackets when it gets to 60. That is hilarious. Yeah.
That's a hot weather for us.
Yeah.
I bet.
Mm-hmm.
All
But
right, I just
overall,
share the stream.
oh, I see it. Okay. Hold on.
Awesome. So they'll be able to catch it live with this link, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. It says sign in with Google accounts though.
I think they just have to have a Google email,
Okay.
maybe.
Yeah, I think so. Today's my anniversary.
Oh, really?
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Happy anniversary.
Thank
Yes.
you.
How many years?
Anniversary. 12 years.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. Right?
That's a lot. That's good though.
For 2020, that's a lot. Yeah. So that's where we're at the in-laws and mother-in-law. And my husband's birthday is the 21st April. So he had that very well planned. And if you've never forgotten each other, if you've never forgotten your anniversary, you know, I don't know how true the marriage is because we have fallen in that. Oh my gosh, we forgot our anniversary. So is it live now or how's it? I
It's
can't see. I just
live.
see God's faces, wonderful faces. Oh, awesome.
Okay.
So
Will they be
talking
able
about
to
grief.
post questions here or through Facebook?
Probably Facebook. I don't think they can post questions here.
Okay. Awesome.
Unless they go to Google, right?
I have no idea, honestly.
Okay.
First time. We'll
Listen.
see.
We're figuring this out.
Right?
We'll see.
It's the nice thing about being flexible.
Mhm.
Yes.
Going with it.
All
So
right.
how's everyone's week though? I think we need to do check-in because
Ugh.
it has been and I'm glad that we're talking about grief because I think I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna speak for myself. I feel like I keep on going through these stages of, oh, maybe it's not that bad. I just need to just move, just keep on moving. And then all of a sudden I'm watching the news and like this sadness comes over me.
Mm-hmm.
Hearing like the devastation and the distress that people are in, even just to
Mm-hmm.
have their basic essentials like food.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
here in San Antonio, they reported there was like droves of people in line, and the census was that most people had never had to ask for help for food.
Mm-hmm.
And they're having to go through that now. So
Yeah. The place where I work at, I think it was like people they had like really nice trucks coming through, and they were very kind of embarrassed to be asking for help. But they're like, "Well, I haven't worked. I have this nice truck, but I don't have like income right now. It doesn't really matter."
Yeah.
So I think it's hard for people also to accept that it's a time that they need help right now as well.
Yeah.
And the sad part is like a lot of those food places, they're leaving with disabilities. They're not including them, which is horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
especially if. Go ahead.
yeah.
Well,
Like they keep saying, "Oh, go to the schools, go to the schools." But if an elderly person, for example, doesn't have teeth, how do you expect to eat that sandwich and that apple? They're not going to be able to eat it at all. Like, first off, that's not a meal. What the school is giving out is not a meal. It's not nutritious. But even more like a person with disabilities, depending on their illness, that's not going to work. You know, like you have people who have gastric issues, so they can't eat certain things, or people who need Ensure instead of food, but they're not getting that. You know, so and what I keep hearing people saying, but you know what? It's better something than nothing. But that is nothing. Like for people who can't eat it, that is nothing. It's so stressful. Like I've been doing mutual aid on the ground, and it's just stressful to hear these calls coming in. You know, like I'm hungry, I'm starving. Like it makes me want to cry. And it's basic stuff. You know, there's not these people are not talking. They're going to contract the virus or they're going to get back to work. I mean, they're literally focusing on right now. What do I need right now? And that's food. And I can't get food because I get the delivery. You know, I can't stand in long lines, or I might need to use the bathroom more often than other people, but there's no bathrooms nearby in those lines, or I can't carry those things that you're giving me. Like there's all these obstacles, and people are not including all those people, even homeless people. That 50 of them have a disability, and so they're not being included in basic resource. I think like if we are trying to reinvent that wheel of mutual aid and what the government is supposed to do, then I think we should be the ones doing a better job on that. Like, are we being inclusive? Are we ensuring that everyone is included? And then you add the layer to the disability language. That's a whole disaster. That's a whole disaster. Like you barely can get to someone and you know English with a disability. But then you speak Spanish. Oh my God. Or you speak another language. Or you're undocumented. But that's my vent on food.
You know, and I guess to tie it in, like, of course, because we're talking about duelo, right? Like, we're definitely going to explore, like, los etapas de duelo or grief. And so one of the things that I think that we keep on repeating is that this pandemic, like the layers, the complexity of it, that is, where do you even start? I think we keep on, I think that's the benefit, or we're hoping that having these discussions that we can tap into conversations such as, it's not only trying to get food, but imagine those that don't even speak a language trying to access food, or with the disability. So the layers are so complex that unless you're having these discussions, we're not becoming aware. Like you bringing that up is bringing awareness.
And there's a lot of grievance there. A lot. Like these people are calling or texting desperately. Like, oh my God, it's been a week. And there's like what you said, that duelo, you know, that mourning. Where am I going to get this next? I can't go out, but I can't figure out the resource. And then you add another layer, which is elderly people. They're not tech savvy. And most of these mutual aids are Facebook related, internet related, spreadsheet related. How do they even
register, right? Register online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't register.
Yeah. So a lot of people are grieving, like just basic needs, like not even the virus, basic.
Yeah.
How am I going to survive today or within the next week? It's
Hmm.
What is coming to mind for me
oh
right now is trauma, like the trauma reminders. If we have folks that left countries that they were in despair of not being
Hmm.
able to have food or lack of employment, right? So you finally get some type of establishment here, and then to re-experience this, of course, in a whole nother country, but very similar, like that
Hmm.
trauma reminder. I'm just
yes.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that. That's a very good point because we know that a lot of the people that come to the United States come from countries that they don't have either job security or food security, that's very limited. And to come here, establish yourself and have some stability and have that just ripped away could definitely trigger a lot of that like previous trauma that they might have experienced.
and I'm thinking, I don't know, I definitely correct me if I'm wrong, like especially with folks with disabilities, like you may be treated, you're already treated by society like you're invisible, and so this is like again having to go through that trauma,
Hmm.
re-experiencing that, not only from a governmental but from a community. And I don't think it's
Yes.
intentional, but I think it's right now it's the self-preservation in people without the boots in the ground, like what you're doing out in where you are in New York, like the mutual aid that you're providing, boots in the ground. um I don't know, I mean, for individuals like you that, because you have experienced it, I know you share quite a bit about your story being homeless, and
Mhm.
um I think now, like certain experiences that we have, if we didn't have those, we wouldn't be able to advocate for our communities, right? Like as you're
Yeah.
going through it, you don't realize like, God, what am, and that's one of the things, like you kind of bargain, like, God, if you, that's grief, right? God, if you
Hmm.
can just get me out of this situation. Like when we have our own personal stuff and we think as even clinicians or peer specialists,
Hmm.
in hindsight, when you're doing better in life, you now you can see, okay, that experience was, allows me, enables me to help my community,
Hmm.
And I think
if that makes
too,
sense.
it's
So
yeah, and sometimes it is ignorance. It's the mind of certain people not wanting to expand it. Like I think if you include the people who have experienced it from the very beginning of creating your system, whatever that system is, whether it's pantry,
Hmm.
mutual aid, food distribution, if you created the most marginalized communities from the very beginning and hear them out, I think it's easier and better to create a system than leaving them at the end and saying, oh yeah, we did leave you out. Oops. But I guess we'll figure it out. I think
And
it's
the
taking
figuring out
yeah.
never happens.
yes at that. Yeah, but it's also that resistant. We have lived in a country that's capitalist and ableist. It's like the most healthiest, and we've seen this in the time of slavery. We didn't mourn for people with disabilities. They were like, oh, they're weak. We got to dispose of them. Where's
Hmm.
the strongest black man? Where's the strongest black woman? To have them recreate, work the land. And we see this in history, that ableism from
So I,
slavery. And then,
so I
okay,
definitely
you're
want
not good
people to
enough?
consider.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like, if you look at like John Henryism, people definitely look into that, and that's basically, if you know the story of John Henry, like he was this big burly black man, and they just worked him and worked him and worked him, right? So that idea that certain communities, the resilience that we've talked about before, like we don't want resiliency, we just want systems in place.
Hmm.
We don't want to
Mhm.
have to go back to, well, those communities are resilient, so they make the best out of what they do have. It shouldn't, we shouldn't have to um, reference that. We shouldn't have to go back to that, right? Like,
Hmm.
I don't want to have to be resilient. I just want the system in place.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's this COVID is exposing a lot of things that maybe likely people that either were ignorant or maybe really not wanting to know. It's very bold right now.
But the interesting thing is people are seeing huge, and I mean immense inequality right now. But then the people who are trying to recreate it and who are themselves, the people who are going to change things, in a way, they're recreating it. It's like they've taken this capitalist system, colonized system, but it's like they're making their own version. When you don't consider marginalized communities, what are you doing? When you don't consider the most vulnerable, what are you doing if not recreating the system? It's like this similar. You're just calling it mutual aid, but if you're not really who you're serving, and if it's serving marginalized communities, what ends up happening? That's an
Nothing.
interesting.
You nothing. You're going to continue to get the same results.
Yeah, you're failing the people that you are supposedly wanting to help. So it's like, okay, your help is like Tasha says, doing nothing. We're not reaching the people we need to reach.
And then I'm thinking we have to start considering, what is this going to look like after the pandemic itself is over? Because we know a recession of some type is coming. We don't know what that's going to look like, how severe it's going to be, but it's definitely coming. So what system are we putting in place? And are we going to continue to leave out marginalized communities, or are we going to ensure that marginalized communities are included? Like right now, they're reporting that Black people have the highest rate of death from COVID-19.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
Horrific.
Yeah. And so, how is implicit bias coming across in the medical realm, right? Like when Black and brown folks are attempting to seek help, but our own stigmas of, right at the beginning, Black folks were like, oh, wow, we don't get COVID, right?
Yeah.
That's not a us virus, right? So I think definitely the concern is, will there be change out of this, or would it the same systems function the same way? And of course, everything goes back to money, right? Like how much money is going to be dispersed. And you know what? Like of all times that the census is happening right now, that people are not really wanting to contribute or complete those census surveys, because we know that's how funding works and how it can contribute to our communities. This is to me the worst time that I wish they would kind of push it back and consider once this is kind of over. Because I think my hope is that we won't continue with the same treatments and access, the failed access to even the basic needs continues after this. But I think time will tell. Time will tell.
And that is our community mourning. I think our community is mourning. Like when I look at COVID-19, a lot of people say mourning because of isolation, or mourning because of the death of COVID, or mourning because someone is sick, or mourning because of the things they lost, like they can't go for the walk or they can't go to the restaurant. But for our community, I think there's this extra layer of mourning. And by community, I say, people of color, people with disabilities, homeless people, the marginal people. They have to mourn the death, the people who are sick, and what they've lost, and lack of food, and lack of service. Like there's this additional layer that not many people know or understand. Like how get food. That's mourning. How am I going to get diapers for my kids? That's mourning, or formula,
Mm-hmm.
or how am I going to survive, if I need to go to the hospital because my illness is acting up. But then if I go to the hospital, I'm going to get exposed to the virus, which can then kill me because I have an illness that puts me in the category.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So much, it's so stressful, and it brings a lot of grief. A lot of grief. I think for our communities, there's a lot of grief, and it's all these extra layers.
So it's that anticipatory, right? Like, how long am I going to go without food? How
Mm-hmm.
long am I going
Mm-hmm.
to be in the situation? How long is it going to be that I won't be able to work again? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and let's say our communities have like, I think about the YMCA, right? So where the kids, that was like a place that kids and family can go for some type of reprieve or relief, or just uh, a sense of community. And you grieve that, you grieve those places, things, and people, and but you also, in the anticipatory part of it, is it going to be shut down for a long time? Because right now,
Mm-hmm.
you think about government agencies that are grant funded,
Mm-hmm.
what is that going to impact? Like, it may impact to the point of what used to be in place, the little that was in place is taken away,
Mm-hmm.
that it will no longer be there.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's like, well, how do you use our grant money? Where did our grant money go? And
Mm-hmm.
reports and all those things that people that use grants to fund whatever agency, they need to produce numbers to be able to
Hmm.
continue getting these grants. So that's that. I mean, this is the magnitude of the impact of this virus is you can't even grasp it.
I think that's best. You can't even grasp it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know why did, I know we have been like, we kind of chat quite a bit like offline,
Mm-hmm.
and grief came up, I think last week or 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
um I don't remember how it came up, but for you, for yourself, how have y'all been dealing with it? Like, do you see yourself going through grieving processes, um or know others close to you that you kind of see, like, yeah, I could tell they're being affected by it?
I think it's a little bit of both. Like, I where I can see others being affected by it, and then like myself, there's been other Zoom or like video conference meetings that I'm a part of where it's a check-in and people like break down because they can't
Mm-hmm.
do it anymore. So it's like, what do I do? These are people that very kind of reserved, um, never really showed emotion. Now they're breaking down over a video call, and just to see that, it's very impactful because you like, what do I do? Um,
Yeah.
so it's a lot. I think that's as much as I can say. It's
And I
overwhelming.
and I think it's worth noting that grief comes in different expressions. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not just crying. You have the
Mm-hmm.
process of anger,
Mm-hmm.
denial, acceptance. You know how they say the 7 steps to grieving. And one of the things I've been seeing from people and myself,
Mm-hmm.
and anger is a part of grief. To feel that
Mm-hmm.
it's okay. I mean, granted, you don't take it out on someone else, and but to feel it, that's normal. That's part of grief.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of, oh my
Yeah.
God, the situation. What the heck? Because you don't have no control. You have no
Mm-hmm.
control of what your job says. You have no control if you're going to eat or not because of the way the system is. Like, you can try, but this is what's happening right now. And it's okay to feel that. It's okay to feel that anger, to be upset with the system, to be upset with the mutual aids that are taking place that are not servicing you. That's
Mm-hmm.
part of grief. I think sometimes people forget, grief is not just crying.
Mm-hmm.
Grief, it's also all these other emotions. It's also denial. Like you see a lot of people, they're like, oh, this virus is not real. It's
Yep.
not real. Or,
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
or they want to go back out. They want to go back out. And it's been interesting, but if we look at it in a psychological perspective, they're grieving in some way. Like they're like, I need to get back to work because, and you said this, Marisol, they've never had to ask for food. It's a
Mm-hmm.
prideful thing. It's like, oh my God, I'm one of them. I'm one of the colored people. I'm one of the poor people. Oh my God, no. So it's part of
Mm-hmm.
their, I need to get back to work. This to be over, a part of the denial. There's
Yeah.
no such thing as virus. There's no such thing as a pandemic. We all need to get back normal,
Mm-hmm.
but it's that grief of I've lost my job. I've lost my pride. I've lost being able to be independent. So I think that that's important to know, like how you grieve is different for everyone. That we have different emotions.
And I think that's what we want people to know, that during this time you're gonna go through those stages. You're gonna go through, no, this the virus is not really legit. Maybe it's not as bad as they say it is.
I did that.
Um, and then you may go through bargaining, like, okay, I'm gonna stay home for these 2 weeks, but come next week, then I need to get out.
Yep.
So it's
Yes.
that those things that you're running through your head, and you're kind of, it's your way to make it through this. And we just want you to know that that is grief, and it's okay. You're gonna go through those stages. um
Mm-hmm.
and I think, for me, this past week was sadness. I was feeling a lot of sadness, and um especially every time, I guess this week, maybe the media, there was a focus on um people trying to, the food was really big in the media this week, and I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't imagine myself with 2 kids having to figure out, like, I couldn't, as a parent, you want to just that, those things. I want to be able to give you shelter and food,
Mm-hmm.
clothes, those basic necessities. And I could not imagine. I'm looking at my kids and I'm like, I wouldn't know what to do. I
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there's resources out there, but like you mentioned, you go through that pride, and I've never had to do this before, and I had to ask for help. It just, sadness was the stage I was in this week, dealing with grief. So um yeah, and in the uncertainty of this, we don't know. You want to anticipate the best, right? And then you don't have a timeline that can definitely contribute to the grief that you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. So yeah, it's been heavy this week. I think it's been heavy every week, but yeah.
Yeah, it I don't know. I think it is just more than anything normalizing the feelings that people are going through right now. That you like, I used to said, so the anger, that's normal. The sadness, the maybe, I don't know if anybody's reached acceptance yet, but
I
that's another
don't.
part of it. I don't know many people that have reached acceptance, because it's really hard, because we don't. One thing is when you lose something, like for example, the biggest one we know about grief is with death. So that's kind of terminal. Somebody passes away, that's that. So you can reach the acceptance. Okay, but when are we going to reach the acceptance? Because we don't know when this is going to end. There's no stopping point. At least we haven't seen it yet. So how it goes back to, when am I gonna like get over these feelings?
And now that you say that, Marisol, it makes me think about the people who are passing in the hospital. You know, they
Mhm.
have no connections to family. There's no more funerals. There's not this connection that used to happen before. And so I
Mhm.
was reading an article the other day how doctors in the ER are now being forced in a way, not by force by other people, but by the situation to become palliative care doctors.
Oh wow.
So they're
Wow.
the ones holding the patient's hand in their last breath. They're the
Mhm.
ones asking, what songs do you want to hear as they're
Mhm.
dying, or listening to their members
Mhm.
right before their pass. And I think grief now is different. Grief has become a internet sensation. Like I never imagined something like this. Like to be connected virtually to your family member as they pass,
Hmm.
even by their bedside. Like we've made this shift, this technological shift, and it looks so different. And
Mhm.
definitely the grief is different. I'm wondering how people are going to process that afterwards, because they that contact, that human in their space contact. It was virtual, it was technological.
Mhm.
So it's different. And even for
Ye-
too, like how do they process? They went from doctors to palliative care, which is completely different. It's like providing those last calls towards death.
Mhm.
ye- So as you're talking about that, like as far as now having to move and the use of technology, um, and I know we kind of all read this article by David Kessler, and he's like the
Mhm.
go-to person for grief, and he's known in the therapy world for um, being in the forefront of grief. And so one of the things I was listening to him talk about the acceptance and how um, what becomes difficult for people to move through life is you can arrive to acceptance, but it's accepting that the person's no longer there physically, right? And
Mhm.
so you can go through the grief, or do you choose to go through struggle, right? So the struggle part is what kind of stands out to me. But when you're talking about the person no longer being there physical, right? Like, but when you're not even permitted to go with them through the process of the palliative care as they're during the ER, I understand that family members are not being allowed to have any once they go to whatever stage, that's it. Like there's no more contact. Um, how much more difficult for the next time you see them, it's through this virtual setup, right? You
Mhm.
saw them alive, and then the next step is the virtual setup, and they're gone.
Mhm.
Um, like, how do you even begin to process that? Like, how does the stages of grief apply to that?
Yeah.
Is there
Mhm.
gonna have to be an added? Is there gonna have to be an added stage, right? Um,
Mhm.
Yeah, because you see a
like
lot
this
of
is
people that when their people die, I've seen this with mothers who are grieving. They launch themselves to the body, and it's almost a testament of that death. Like, oh my God, I feel them. They are dead. Because until
Mhm.
body, it's like, no, no, not, no,
yeah.
no way. This is not real. This is not
Mhm.
happening. It's a confirmation for them. But now you don't have a body. You have the virtual reality, but is that really true? Did they really die? You don't really have that confirmation. So, what is it like for people?
Yeah.
Uh, the dynamics of many things are gonna change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And every time we talk, it's always like these levels of things that, and that's why I love our chats on Sunday, because it's always like, I didn't even think about that. Like, how is that going to? What is that going to look like?
Mhm.
And so what can people do as they're going through this grief? Like, how could they manage grief? What could we suggest? One thing is we know it's a collective. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
Just
And
like
for
it's a
us
collective trauma that
Latinos,
we're experiencing.
yeah, for us Latinos, Latinx, I know for us, particularly Dominicans, I don't know if other countries do it. They do what they call the novena,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where people have coffees and galletitas. It's a time for bochinche, but also too a time to come together for this
I
family
love
member who
bonchinche.
died.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And they the families that are left behind,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's economically or helping them make food, casseroles for days.
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah, yeah.
family surrounds this person
Yeah,
and
they
says,
embrace you.
you're not going to be alone. I am here. What do
Mm-hmm.
you need? You need me to pick up. You need me to do this. Like, the family is there. You don't have that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Now
you have to
that
think about
family
stuff.
member is
Yeah.
completely isolated to deal with this death, what happens there? Like, what do we do?
Yeah, how are traditions, cultural traditions upheld? So that's like another sense of loss.
You know,
Yes.
and I think maybe that's something that um becoming creative and celebrating the lives. Prender una vela, you still trying to maintain the cultura, the culture
Mm-hmm.
as that is normally practiced when someone passes on. And so I think that's maybe a step we're encouraged to consider. Um, and it doesn't have to necessarily be the loss of a loved one. What ritual or what practices have you done? And I think
Mm-hmm.
about the vela, because the vela is like allows you to meditate, right? If there's a loss of work or a loss of income, and of course praying about it and whatnot, or whatever practices that you were using or doing before,
Mm-hmm.
um, still attempting those. If you're in the space for it, we have to be mindful that sometimes we're just not in the headspace for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, yeah, definitely still trying to, I don't know, being creative virtually. I don't know, how could you do that, right?
Yeah, how can we
Yeah,
support our family members during that time?
yeah.
So, oh yeah, this is a lot.
It
I think that's the word. I'm just that is the it should just be a meme. This is a lot, but it's a lot to process. But I'm glad that we are able to kind of process together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Community is
good to say we
essential.
have the answer. I think we should not be afraid to say that. Like, I've seen people who wanna fit models that may not be this time or work in this time, instead of being okay with, like, we don't know yet.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna figure it out as we go along, as we have these discussions,
Mm-hmm.
and what's gonna be the next, like you said, what's gonna be the next step of grieving, because there's gonna probably be more to that, and be open to exploring, be
Mm-hmm.
open to adding new coping skills that we didn't think about, or new ways of dealing with death, but still keeping our cultura,
Mm-hmm.
or how can we embrace who we are virtually and exploring that. Maybe we don't have the answer, but it's okay to explore it and
Mm-hmm.
have those discussions.
Yeah. It's just okay not to know. We don't
Yeah.
need to have the answers to everything, even though we want to. And so I think that's frustrating for people sometimes,
Mhm.
not knowing when maybe they were the person that always had a solution.
Yeah.
So
And most of the time with grief is we're wanting to know why. Why is this
Mm-hmm.
happening? Why did it happen?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what acceptance is this has happened. How do I proceed? How do
Mm-hmm.
I move forward? And so, but again, it's okay, like you said, not to have the answers. We don't have the answers because none of us has gone through a pandemic. None of us.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, um, but we want definitely people to know that this is a collective experience of grief. And yes, for some it's more intense than others. It's a collective trauma,
Mm-hmm.
um, more intense for others. But we're just hoping that with these chats on Sundays that we reach one. As long as we reach one person, I think we're okay with that, right? Or I'm
Yeah.
okay with that. So, but it's therapeutic. I'll say for me to have these discussions with you too.
Likewise. Likewise.
Yes,
Yeah. So
definitely.
And to know it's
absolutely.
okay too, like finding ways to release that anger. Like for me, I've had to find, so I'm trying to order like a but meanwhile I set up like a pillow, and because when I've had like emotional anger, I take it out with boxing. It's my healthy way of coping, and it
Mm-hmm.
works for me. It's good, and knowing that to find ways that you can release those emotions. If you feel like crying, cry. If right now you just need to write things down and process and deal with the
Journal.
denial, yeah, like find all these little ways, color, draw, like finding outlets right
Mm-hmm.
now is really a key for many people, and that's going to vary from person to person,
Mm-hmm.
especially depending on what they feel, but allowing those emotions to be felt and say, this is where I'm at right now, Lynn. That's okay. This is what I'm going to deal with right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 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 So, well, I think we've met our hour.
Yeah.
But I think we're hoping to talk about resiliency right next week. And
Yes.
so I think
Yeah.
that's going to be a really, really great discussion as always. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would see
Yeah.
everyone next week.
We'll see each other next
Yes.
week. We'll get it together
Bye.
next week.
Yes, I'm sitting in my car because I have little people that will definitely interrupt. So, all right.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.
Have a good one.